The struggle was about the land. In the 1960s, Zimbabwe was engulfed in a civil war between the minority white government of Ian Smith and liberation fighters led by Joshua Nkomo and Robert Mugabe. The struggle was about the return of the land that was grabbed from indigenous populations by mainly white British settlers. Ian Smith declared unilateral independence in 1965, seeking self-determination from Britain. In August of 1979, at the Commonwealth Heads of State Conference held in Zambia's capital, Lusaka, many African leaders prevailed upon then Prime Minister of Britain, Margaret Thatcher. They convinced her to intervene by putting pressure on the Ian Smith regime to grant political independence to the majority black Zimbabweans. Consequently, at Her Majesty's government invitation, a meeting was convened in London from September to December of 1979 and was held under the chairmanship of Lord Carrington, then Britain's Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs. In attendance to sign the Lancaster House agreement with the Patriot Front, consisting of the Zimbabwe African Peoples Union, ZAPU, led by Mr. Joshua Nkomo, and the Zimbabwe African National Union, ZANU, led by Mr. Robert Mugabe. Bishop Abel Muzorewa and Prime Minister Ian Smith represented the Rhodesia government. However, the 3-month-long conference with about 47 plenary sessions was bumpy and almost failed to reach a logical conclusion because of the disagreements on the land reform. Both Mugabe and Nkomo threatened to walk out and go back to the bush to continue with the civil war. Sir Sridhar Ramphal was also instrumental in convening the Lancaster House meeting. He took his own initiative by contacting the then United States Ambassador in London, Kingman Brewster. This was an effort to get US President Jimmy Carter to promise money to pay off white settlers for their land if they chose not to accept reconciliation under the willing buyer, willing seller principle. Within 24 hours, President Carter authorized Ambassador Brewster on behalf of the United States to pledge a substantial contribution towards the process of land redistribution and that he would encourage the British government to offer similar pledges. The British government followed through the deal by paying white farmers $35 million in the first 8 years for their land and then redistributed it. But this gesture was short-lived. The British government cut off the funds when it accused the Mugabe regime of patronage by giving some of the farms to President Mugabe's closest associates. President Mugabe was infuriated by this action and claimed that the British government had acted in bad faith. This incident acted as a precursor to the seizure of over 4,000 white farms by President Mugabe through his staunch followers. In the month of February 2000, President Mugabe's government presented a draft constitution in a referendum in which a proposal to expropriate white-owned farmland for the settlement of landless blacks was made. The referendum was rejected at the polls. In spite of the rejection, the Mugabe administration went ahead and instituted a fast-track land reform program. A revolution was started, locally known in the Shona language as Chimurenga. Mugabe's ZANU-PF militants, led by veteran freedom fighters that fought in Zimbabwe's civil war for independence, spearheaded the land grab. President Mugabe's government's proposal would only compensate the white farmers for value added on the land, such as buildings and equipment. Britain, as the former colonial power, would be expected to pay the farmers for the land they would lose. The British government refused to take up that responsibility. In Zimbabwe, the land redistribution process was characterized as disorderly, at times violent and selective in nature. It largely benefited a small group of black elites with connections to President Mugabe's ruling ZANU-PF party. Opposition Movement for Democratic Change (MDC) party president Mr. Morgan Tsvangirai agreed that land redistribution in Zimbabwe was inevitable, but the process under President Mugabe was flawed. In principle, we have all agreed that a land audit is the first step before we can rationalize the mistakes of the land reform program. Not the reversal of it, but multiple farm ownerships, the partisan nature of the land distribution, and productive use of the land. All these things have to be dealt with so that we have permanent solution to the land problem in the country.